Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. For this episode, I'm following up on a recent episode of Heavy Metallurgy that I wasn't able to appear on. Been dealing with a lot of inclement winter weather in this part of the country in recent weeks. So, yeah, really messed up schedule. There was a week I didn't have time to participate, and that was okay. Marty had some great guests on with Jake and Charlie, and they talked about albums that they love but don't really play very often. And they both had lots of great picks for that topic and lots of good commentary. It was a fun stream. I got to watch about half of it live that night before I fell asleep because, yeah, it has been a really weird couple of weeks schedule-wise for me. So I just conked out. I knew there was no way I could make it through a stream that night. But yeah, I wanted to follow up with some albums that I really like and very rarely play anymore. But I also wanted to touch more on why we don't play these albums very often sometimes. Yeah, the guys discussed some reasons for this during the live stream. But I think one big variable that I'd like to drill a little deeper on is quite simply just the amount of time it takes to listen to a lot of stuff, especially as your collection grows. And I've actually sat down and done the math and I think the numbers really do highlight the problem that we all run into when our collection starts getting bigger and bigger. It's very easy to say, like, oh yeah, I'm just going to sit down and burn through a bunch of albums, or oh yeah, I should replay this, I should replay that. But when do you have the time to do it, and how long does it take to get through a larger collection? So, one thing we have to think about with this exercise is how much time do we have to listen to music on a given day? Uh, I'm going to, have to make a couple of assumptions here. I'm going to assume that I can listen to 4 recordings a day, right? For me, that's probably an upper limit, but reasonable, not crazy. I can usually listen to like one album on my commute to work, one album on my commute home, one album in the evening for an hour, maybe before bed, and I can try to work one other thing in, maybe something on my lunch break. Maybe if I'm caught up on everything, I can listen to 2 albums in the evening instead of one. Yeah, maybe I'm listening to like, 2 shorter things instead of one really long one. So it's something like that. So we're going to go with an assumption that I can play 4 recordings a day. The length, of course, varies a lot depending on what you choose, but you're probably looking at a minimum of 3 to 4 hours out of your day to get through that many recordings. I mean, unless you're just going to pick 4 singles or a couple of short demos or something. So you're uh, dedicating 3 to 4 hours to get through that many titles. All right. So if you're doing listening at that pace, how long would it take you to get through a collection of like 20 albums? Well, 4 per day. If you got 20, it's only going to take you 5 days. In less than a week, you can listen to every single album you've got. This is why I think a big part of why, anyway, we know the albums from our teenage years so well. It's not just that we've owned them for a long time. It's that back then you could play everything you owned in a week, no problem, and play it all again the next week and play it all again the week after that. You could manage this kind of pace. You were listening to all, you could, in theory, listen to all the stuff in your collection on a pretty quick turnaround. But as your collection gets bigger and bigger, it's going to take longer and longer to cycle through every album that you own. For example, by the time you own 100 records, it's going to take you 25 days, close to a month, to get through every recording you have. So that means you could listen to each album maybe once a month, be about 12 times a year. Still listening to things pretty frequently. What happens when we get to bigger collection sizes? Let's face it, most, heavy metal fans have a pretty good collection of stuff. When you're up to 500 records, if you're listening to 4 records a day, and again, this means you're playing each record once and that's it. You're not getting to replay it over and over. You play it one time and you move on. Well, to cycle through 500 records is going to take you about 125 days. That's close to 4 months. So you might get to play every album you own 3 times per year. So now, even the albums that you really love, you're talking about playing them less than once per season in the year. 500, yeah, for some people, that is a lot of records. For a lot of metal fans, it's not. What about 1,000 record collection? You have 1,000 items in your collection. It's going to take you 250 days to cycle through that collection. And again, you've got to stick to this pace of listening to 4 different albums every day. 8 months to get through the collection a single time. So at that point, already with 1,000 albums, you are not going to be able to listen to every album twice within a given year. It will take you over a year to cycle through the collection twice. When you get up to a collection size of 2,000 items, you're looking at 500 days to get through everything. Roughly a year and 4 to 5 months. So you're talking about every item only comes off the shelf roughly once every 2 years. And so again, here's where we really start to see the problem set in. You've got albums that you absolutely love and really enjoy, but if you spend all your time playing those, then it's going to be even longer before you play the other stuff in your collection. If you're trying to work through a lot of your different titles that you own, you simply can't play these albums all the time unless you start finding ways to cram more and more listening into a day. Again, this is all built on the assumption that you're playing 4 albums per day. Could someone play more than that? Sure. Under some circumstances, you might be able to. I know for myself, if I try to start playing more than 4 per day, it means some things are just kind of getting played as background music while I'm very busy and distracted doing other stuff. Yeah, maybe I can put something on while I'm grading papers for a couple of hours. I'm not listening to it very closely at that point, though. So does that really count? Is that quality listening time? Not really. Yeah, and it just gets worse as your collection gets bigger from that. At a collection of 3,000 records, listening to 4 records per day, you're looking at 750 days to get through your entire collection one time. Every item you own would get played about once every 2 years. So every item would get a single spin once every other year. As your collection builds up from there, it would just get worse and worse. It also gets much worse if you can't stick to that pace of 4 albums per day. Yeah. What if you can only listen to 2 records per day? All right, then at a collection size of 3,000 records, which I think a lot of folks on YouTube and a lot of folks who aren't on YouTube in heavy metal, 3,000 is not out of the question. I feel like a lot of the YouTubers have collections much bigger than that. If you've got 3,000 albums and you can only play 2 per day, you're going to need 1,500 days to work through all of them. Uh, you're talking about 4 years. Your favorite album gets played once every 4 years. Your top 10 albums of all time get played once every 4 years. If you want to play them more often than that, you can, but that means other things in your collection will get played even less frequently. And you know, that's how the math sort of works out on it. So I think it really does highlight why it's hard for us to return to albums that we really like and give them a lot of spins. And some people can obviously respond to that and be like, oh, well, it's stupid to have a collection that big. You should get rid of a bunch of stuff. Um, Something that's really important to remember. It's not like people ran out and bought 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 albums all in the past year. People with collections like this, they gradually accumulate over time. Yeah, you're not buying it as one big chunk. Another thing to keep in mind is that something like heavy metal, it's still an active genre. There are still new albums, tons of new albums coming out every year. So if you are someone that enjoys a lot of older heavy metal and a lot of newer heavy metal like myself, it means there's also constantly new stuff coming out that you want to hear, you want to listen to, you want to buy because you enjoy it. But that means your collection's going to keep growing over time as well. Yeah. The only ways to really stop that is just to say, I refuse to buy anything new. I'm not going to listen to anything new. And you just kind of, cut yourself off. It's like, all right, anything that comes out after 2025, fuck it. I will never know about it. I'm only sticking to stuff from 1980 to 2025. Or I'm only going to listen to death metal from 1990 to 2009. That, if you're in a really narrower niche, then maybe you can, limit it a bit. Even with those kind of parameters I just said, there's still going to be tons of music there that you could listen to. Even if you said you're only going to listen to thrash metal, there's thousands of thrash albums out there. More than probably one person could ever hope to hear. Your collection could still get really huge, even if you're just sticking to death metal or just sticking to black metal or just sticking to power metal. Doesn't matter. So yeah, that's kind of the main point for this part of the video. I think it's worth realizing just how long it takes to cycle through your collection. It's so easy for us to say like, "Oh yeah, why haven't I played that album in so long?" Or to criticize somebody for being like, "Dude, you said you haven't played this album in 3 years. Why do you even own it?" Um, for a lot of people, they own it because they like it, they enjoy it, but we can all only listen to so much music per day, per week, per year. And, with a larger collection, whether it's a physical collection, whether it's all digital MP3 collection, doesn't matter. It still takes time to listen to stuff. And with a big collection, that's going to take a long time to go through. So yeah, hopefully those numbers kind of help put it a little bit into perspective about why it takes people a long time to replay albums, even the ones that they really, really like. So now for the second half, I grabbed a handful of albums off the shelf that, yeah, I really enjoy. And yeah, all of these I haven't played in forever, except for one, which I just played recently for the first time. We'll start with that one. Wasp, the Headless Children. I have probably only played this twice in the past 5 years. Maybe only once. I might have played it once when we did the uh, Wasp discography deep dive with Darcy over on Heavy Metallurgy, but I know the album well enough. I may not have even played it prepping for that stream. Was thinking about it recently. It's like I want something that's kind of a cool, heavy, angry vibe, to put on the iPod. It's like, I know what, let's do Wasp. I was like, man, I haven't played this in forever. It is my favorite Wasp album. Uh, an album I think almost every single track is just, top-notch material on. Love it front to back. But yeah, it had been years and years before I had played the Headless Children. Part of that is, again, just the time it takes to cycle through a collection. Part of it with Wasp is too, in recent years, I've picked up some of the other Wasp albums that I never got around to. I never found a copy of before. And so when I've wanted to hear Wasp, I've tried to spend time on those albums and get more familiar with them because I already know this one so well. But this one is still my favorite. But yeah, it's only recently come off the shelf for the first time in a long time. Some others that, yeah, have gone years without getting a spin. Marty mentioned this one, I believe, during the live stream. I think it came up in that stream. Uh, Samael's Ceremony of Opposites. Fantastic record. Love it to death. Got it back in the day when it came out. Is one of the first black metal CDs I went out and bought a copy of. Again, I was a little late to black metal. Didn't work its way, that genre just didn't work its way into my corner of the world until closer to like 95, as opposed to the earlier 90s. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. Still, a rank kind of album. But yeah, it's been a very long time since I've played this one. I know Marty mentioned he usually reaches for Blood Ritual instead. Blood Ritual is a great album. I've even started to warm up more to worship him in recent years, but yeah, and just Ceremony of Opposites hasn't gotten the spins in recent years. Example number three, Danzig 2, Lucifuge. For me, this was the Danzig album that really sold me on Danzig's solo band. I had the self-titled before this, and I like that album a lot now. It took me a couple of years to warm up to it. I got it, geez, I don't know. I got it in high school, so I don't know, 90, 91, somewhere in there. Um, but yeah, it wasn't love at first listen with that self-titled Danzig album. It took me a little while to get used to how bluesy it was, but gradually it was one of those things where like every time I played it, I would pick up on like one more song. So gradually, with a lot of spins, I really came to like all the songs. But with Danzig 2, this one clicked right off the bat and is I've gone back and forth over the years on whether 2 or 3 is my favorite Danzig album. Doesn't matter at the end of the day. I do think 3 is probably a little stronger. 3 does get spins a little more often. As much as I like Danzig 2, I don't know the last time I played the whole album. It's here, but it just, and I like it, but it does not get played very often anymore. Let's see, going back over to the black metal shelf. Yeah, it's been ages since I played this one. Morrigan and their Celts album. Morrigan, if you're not familiar with them, they're a German band and they operate in the Bathory mold. Yeah, the thing that's interesting about Morrigan is that some bands that copy Bathory stick to the early albums, and other bands stick to the Viking later Bathory albums. Morrigan does both. Most of their albums will include some songs that have the very raw primal vibe of the first two or three Bathory records. But then they'll also have a couple of songs that are much more in line with like Hammerheart, Twilight of the Gods era Bathory. And Morgan manages to do both styles very, very well. Right? So yeah, not the most original band, but I liked a lot of their albums. They were active late 90s into the 2000s. They have shown back up and put out a new album. It's probably been 3 years or so ago by now. But yeah, I used to play albums like Morgan's Celts quite a bit. It would probably be a safe bet this album hasn't been played in 10 years. Can't say for sure. I keep notes on some things, but I don't have notes going back that far on playing Morgan. But I'll bet it's been a decade since it got popped in the CD player. Good album, good band, doesn't get played much. All right, fifth and last one I pulled off, keeping this kind of short, is Edguy, Theater of Salvation. This is their third, maybe fourth album. Always a little fuzzy on the early Edguy catalog. The first album or two are okay. That not my favorites. When you get to like Vainglory Opera and this one though, Edguy really hit their stride. This is, excellent 90s European power metal without the cheesiness or silliness. You know, Within another album or two after this one, Edguy was starting to get a little too jokey sometimes. That's where you started getting things like, the songs Lavatory Love Machine and they're okay to a point, but those jokes I find wear kind of thin after a few listens. Back here, this is just, glorious Halloween gamma ray, level kind of stuff. This was album, yeah, I played to death back in the day. It was a little hard to track down a copy of it. I got it. I don't remember what year this one comes out. I got this one probably in 2001, maybe 2002. And yeah, played it a lot back then. I still like it. It's got a great track list, but it's been years since I played that Ed Guy CD. Um, yeah. So yeah, those are some of the things I probably would have shown if I had been able to participate that night. We all have lots of good albums. Now it's time to wrap up this video and talk metal in the comments down below. What are some of your favorite albums that you realize you just haven't spun in a long time? Do you have a really massive collection and you've noticed that, yeah, it just takes you a long time to cycle through things? Do you intentionally try to keep your collection at a very small size, to help mitigate this problem? I do know some fans and collectors who will have kind of self-imposed rules where, like one guy I've talked to, he keeps his collection at 600 records or less because he feels like if it gets bigger than that, he's just not going to be able to play stuff. And so he just, if he gets stuff and starts noticing it's above 600, he gets rid of some things that he hasn't played recently. It's like if I'm not playing them regularly, I'm just not going to keep them. That's only going to work if you keep your collection pretty small, though. Do you have any self-imposed rules like that, or do you just have 10,000 albums and yeah, some of them don't get played once every 5 or 10 years, and that's just the way it is? Leave your story in the comments down below so other folks can see it and kind of have fun comparing notes. All right, that is going to do it for this one. Until next time, everyone, take care. And as always, keep banging your head.